This is the rise of DeFi panel. So a lot of the people you've heard from today. We're gonna start with a brief round of introductions. Kevin.
Hey, so just real briefly, like I said in my talk, I studied electrical and computer engineering, worked in software for a short while. That's probably what made crypto so interesting when I stumbled into it, was that intersection of kind of game theory, economics, and computer science, and worked as an engineer. Crypto was kind of my intro to finance, to be honest. So that's like where I started branching out and learning about a bunch of TradFi topics was from getting into crypto, actually kind of reversed. But yeah, so thanks.
Yeah, I'm Daffy from the Mango DAO. Yeah, my background, I was sort of crypto my whole career. Just before building protocols on Mango or building on Solana, I was a market maker, trading on centralized crypto, centralized exchanges, and yeah, and then after seeing Solana, I was hooked. And since then, I've been building the Mango protocol and helping with the Mango DAO and all that stuff. So.
Dan Gunsberg, co-founder at Hero Network. Been in derivative space for 27 years now. Got into crypto in 2015. I was a chief operating officer, principal at a proprietary trading firm here in Chicago for a number of years prior. And just been building Hero since 2018.
I'm Bernd from Bernd Finance. Prior to this, I was at a Injective Protocol, decentralized derivatives on Cosmos.
Cool. Awesome. So a very diverse panel, a lot of TradFi experience, building DeFi products. So as DeFi starts to enter the mainstream, how do you guys explain DeFi or describe DeFi to your non-native peers?
I think for me, a lot of it is just the idea of access. I think it's, the easiest way to get to people is just kind of pointing at what happened with AMC or GameStop, right? Where, I think you're having this rush of populism and this ability of understanding where people know that they're not sitting at the table with the big boys. Sometimes I give like the example, if you ever saw The Big Short, where the guys are sitting in the JPM lobby and they don't have enough money for an ISDA, and that kind of feeling on the global level. That's what DeFi solves.
I've always thought, or I guess the way I've explained it to people is just simply, it's a way to open access and a way to manage your own personal assets or whatever it is that is sitting on chain, and removing any intermediaries that could potentially utilize your information, steal from you, do anything of the sort, and I think that's probably the way that I'll best explain it to somebody who's newer to the industry.
So, I mean, for me, it's I would say, well, before Solana, I think I would just go around saying like, it's all fake. There's Bitcoin, and it's money that's not under the control of a state. And this is like interesting to sort of my friends, but not really interesting to my mom. So I just don't talk to her about this. And then after Solana, I would go, again, this two-tiered approach with like my friends. I would say, look, this is like what the internet used to feel like. And you're just flying around, even in the previous demo where I was, looking at like random people's accounts and then going on this link chase of, oh, this guy traded with this guy and that guy traded with that guy, and looking at and that's how I felt the internet used to be, where you just wildly exploring your interests. And so that's how I explain it to my friends, and they basically agree. And also there's the financial component, which they agree with. But I would say again, I think there are like multiple tiers to this where there's your, like your tech bro friends who will get it and who are on board already. And then there's, again, like if I try to explain this to my mom, I don't think we're there yet. And so I feel like that's one of our goals. At least my personal goal is to build up Mango Market so I could very clearly explain it to crypto non-native people that are really far down the pipeline.
Yeah, it's kind of an ungating of some certain financial services that were previously difficult to access for retail, is what I always think of. And that doesn't mean that it's like easy to make money, right? Like it's difficult and you have to learn a lot to get into it. But for example, providing liquidity, AMMs have kind of enabled people to do what market makers were doing before, and as well, taking out loans on your assets was something that just was pretty gated, and so it's kind of cool that that's open, and if you want to put in the work to understand it, you can do that. And the only other thing that this makes me think of is my boss sent me a podcast a few days ago of it was with David Mercer from LMAX Group, and he was talking about how a more open platform with more varied, diversified types of people is just good for everyone in the end. So I think by extension, the final form of this will be a good thing in say 5 years. More people will have access.
Yeah, there's like a financial system that's kind of takes away those intermediaries. I think Pyth, being a publisher network versus a reporter network, like one of the things that we try to do. You mentioned David Mercer, he's on the board of Pyth, so we're all doing it in different ways, but having the same effect in the market. So many people today said the word composability. A lot of people in the space are talking about 2022 as being the year of composability. What does composability mean, and what does it mean for your protocols?
Do it in the same order. We swap it.
You can go first.
Yeah, I think that word has obviously been like kind of coined by Kyle Samani, where especially like kind of the idea of like Lego blocks, and I think that's a really good concept. And just I definitely don't want to be shouting into an echo chamber, but Lego blocks is definitely the best description of that, right? Where you're going to see the future being a castle of Lego blocks, and so I think when you kind of look at the ecosystem, you look at everything like with Serum, right? Everything that Metaplex is doing, and we work very closely with Metaplex, including the standard, but then being able to use what we built, with the Metaplex standard and everything like that, and kind of entering to this world of DeFi based off of what we had been provided by Metaplex to create this kind of all-encompassing ecosystem. And then even NFT perps, right? Being able to then link that out like a Lego block to something like Serum. This is how we create this ecosystem and how it becomes amazing.
I think you have on the upside of it, you have this amazing, like the real power of decentralized finance is really like at the seams between, the different primitives that would compose to make an exchange. You take Hero, you take Serum, you take Pyth, put it together, you have an exchange, and which is incredible. I'll take the kind of other side of the coin for a second, because I think in a lot of these talks, like people always just are kind of up only on everything. Is you have this insane level in a world that's supposed to be completely trustless. You have this insane level of trust that you have to have for the community that is surrounding the developer community that's building the primitive that you're composing with, and it kind of has this little Google Glass feel to it, where you had all, like, I think Kyle Samani and Solana, like, can't say the two in a different sentence. So, but the reality is, like, you have this thing where you may spend all of your time and energy and resources into building on top of something, and then what happens if that thing you've built on top of fails, goes away, changes direction, which brings to me the power of governance. And one kind of angle that I see in the future of DeFi, and you see it right now with, like, I don't know how, this isn't specific to the Solana network, but like the curve convex relationship, or like the curve wars they call them now. And this idea that really what that is like you have this thing where this this application had actually accumulated so much vote power in Curve that it is able to kind of sway the governance around Curve. And it goes much deeper than that, but that's the basis for it. And I think over time, this is where governance kind of comes full circle and becomes a very powerful element, is that the primitives that you're connecting to, it's vitally important that you actually are a stakeholder in those primitives and that you get involved in the governance aspect, because you need to have a voice in how that primitive evolves, because ultimately you become very dependent on each other. And so I think that's something that as the whole world of DeFi evolves is going to be something very important to pay attention to.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point about like composability being, it's something people don't actually talk about very often is, you know, there's all these other teams building stuff that's on top of Mango. And one of the questions that they have and worries, like very understandably, is like, oh, what if this part of your code changes? What's going to happen? You know, what if there's this liquidation event? Or, and that's, yeah, and I think we're actually just working through those solutions.
What do you say to them?
Well, I'm like, it won't change, you know, or like, we can't promise. Yeah, we can't promise that it won't change, because there's some things like, you know, how Mango actually, how the program upgrades actually work is, at least right now, is there's a council of 7 voters, and there's a reason why we did it this way. Like, we didn't want to put it all under the DAO control, because what if there's a bug? Are we going to do a 3-day vote to say like, hey, let's fix this bug, and publicizing the bug? So there's like a council of 7 people, all public, doxed, whatever. And so I can't tell those people. I can tell them here are all the changes that are upcoming, and they you know, they can even put in their continuous integration like in GitHub and write tests to say like, so that we know, okay, if we change this, this will break like their thing. So there's all these checks built in, but I still can't promise it, because what if there's a bug in that feature and the choice is vote to change it and break their protocol, but save Mango, or not do it. So yeah, it's really tough, and it's a good point. It's a good point that you bring up. And like, there's lots of downsides of composability. Like, one downside is you can't just go change the thing itself whenever you want to. You have to work around the API that they've given.
What does the future of the Council of 7 look like?
Maybe.
What's the genesis of it? And
Maybe we'll just pack the council. You know, like everyone just like
more people.
We'll just put more and more people on there until it's like you know, everyone. I don't know. So the future, I think. Okay, so ideally, we could get to a stable place. We get to a stable place where we get rid of the council. We get rid of the upgrade key entirely, and it's purely a protocol. You know, there's no upgrades, and it's done. I don't think we're close to that. Yeah, I don't think we're close to that, but I can, because even if we're close to that on Mango version 3, which is just now completing an audit, there's like Mango version 4, and that'll have its own bugs. So it's, yeah. The future looks like probably 5 years or something, we'll have these as sealed protocols, but we're all kind of, all this stuff is like fresh, like literally last year. You know?
Is it contingent on Mango, or is it contingent on other things like Solana or the people that, you know, potentially Pyth?
No, it's contingent on Mango. Like it's okay. Yeah, it's the yeah. Solana also is changing rapidly, so that's why there's going to be a Mango version 4, because there's going to be new stuff in Solana. So. Yeah, I guess you could say ecosystem-wide, we're like undeveloped to some extent, and we we'll get to a developed stage, in which case we can just throw away these kind of concerns.
Cool.
Yeah. So yeah, composability can just mean so many different things, right? For Jet at the moment, I guess in a small way, liquidating the serum is an example of composability. Another like non-technical way is with DAOs. Like when you crowdsource like a protocol like that, eventually you can have so many voices cutting in with ideas that would never have been come up with, and your protocol is composed of them in a non-technical way. And yeah, like we're not working on this, but something that I look forward to is like, Katana is on Solana. They do structured options products, so you can throw some USDC in a vault and make, not risk-free, but make pretty good yields from automated put selling strategies that the vault runs. I would love to see something where, we could take the tokens that are placeholders for the position of a user in the vault and then allow them to further, take out some USDC with that as collateral, and then you can wind up, wind down, whatever you're comfortable with. Don't go too crazy, but it just enables all kinds of different strategies, and the curve wars are a good example, like you're saying. This is, I think it's really interesting because it's like debatable whether or not this is good for curve in some ways, I think, and I never hear that discussed. In the long run, I think it still remains to be seen, even in a way.
I mean, it's such an obvious concept, but it's such a new thing that's really come to, even things around like, not only, Curve's obviously the biggest one, and then like Badger getting involved with Curve, but it's going to happen as any primitive layer application or protocol evolves. It only makes sense to happen, right? And it's so interesting how it creates this weird
niche,
kind of interesting level of competition of like my interests versus Daffy's interests, and like, are those aligned? And if they're aligned, then we need to work together to implement the changes that need to be implemented. I think another thing too, like we've been talking about the last week, is just like what we've been doing, getting involved with more with Serum, or like things like that like I think are kind of flipping on its head, like some of the more powerful ways where you can get a group of people together and say, look, there's things that we want to do that maybe are going to be for the better, for the common good of everybody. Let's try to find ways to make that happen. And like, kind of cool. Like nobody's getting paid to do it.
Yeah.
There's just right incentive alignment, like, because it just makes sense in honor of the longevity of the ecosystem that we're all trying to build together.
Lots of room for creativity.
Yeah.
Like one thing about composability, like on the plus side of it, is you get to start on something without having to worry about all the pieces coming together. So like for us starting out, imagine we had to, we would do margin trading. Imagine we had to figure out the order book and provide liquidity on it, and the Oracle. Actually, initially we did run our own Oracle, and that was like the worst part of the Mango V2. That was horrific, and I'm glad now we don't worry about it. But like instead of doing the thing that we're good at, we also had to, because this ecosystem was undeveloped, we also had to do this thing in a really kind of shoddy way. But now that the ecosystem is more developed, we could have just done the margin trading aspect on top really well. And that's an advantage of composability. It's like just easy for new people. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, can you draw analogies like to Web 2 and how we saw way more products over time because a lot of the primitives in Web 2 were built out, or the pieces that were required to launch apps or applications like kind of came about, right? And that's kind of what we're experiencing here. We're seeing some of these things that enable developers to kind of grow and be able to launch faster and more robust products.
Yeah.
So there was this great tweet. I forgot who wrote it, but it basically said, kids today can open a wallet before they can, before they get a bank account. So there's nothing stopping like an 11-year-old from opening a Phantom wallet or playing on Solana or doing any of these things. How do you guys see the future of personal finance? How do you see like some of these users, these very young crypto users that are doing pretty advanced stuff on some of your protocols, potentially. Maybe not. But what are your views on the future of finance?
I mean, for me, the reason I opened up my first bank account ever was I was playing Call of Duty competitively, and I was getting paid.
Yeah.
Other than that, right, like I had no reason to open up a bank account, right? Like, and I think it's so interesting as you see it today, right? Like, you have crypto TikTok. Imagine if you had like bank TikTok. That's the most boring thing in the world, right? Like me being in that position as a kid, I would have been on Axie Infinity probably instead of Call of Duty, and my mom wouldn't have been yelling at me for wasting my time. I would have been like, yeah, no, I'm making money, right? And so I think this just goes kind of all encompassing of just this new age of access and everything. And I think allowing people to monetize off of what they enjoy without them even realizing it is such a key part of the future of DeFi. Yeah.
That's good. I can say just from a personal perspective, I have 2 daughters, and both are below the age required to get a bank account, which is like fucking crazy, right? And so just from like the domestic aspect, using crypto has we've been able to quickly start teaching them financial responsibility very early, which is great. I think from a more holistic aspect is it's kind of like I want banks to continue to allow that to happen, because it will drive this whole generation to utilizing on-chain crypto digital assets. And for us to have real long-term positive change, that generation needs to grow up not knowing any different. Like, you want that 9-year-old when they're 21 just instinctively using a crypto wallet or whatever it's going to be in that 13, the 12, 13 years later. And not even thinking twice about using a bank. Because to me, that's what it's really gonna take. Like the people that are the 9-year-olds now, the kids that are 9-year-olds now, when they're 25, 30, 35, they're the ones that are gonna be driving the world when I'm like, an old guy sitting in my retirement home, right? And so that'll never happen, by the way. I'm eternally young. And but the idea being that having that just ingrained in them, like my kids now the kids now have no idea of what a world looked like pre-mobile phone, right? So that's like an obvious one. And so the evolution to the metaverse seems obvious. Like to me, when I look at my kids, I'm like, they're already in the metaverse. Like they dial into their phones, they're staring at their screens. They lose all sense of physical awareness around them already. It's pretty crazy. And it's that same idea that is just going to evolve the world, and which is so incredible about what we're all doing here. Is like, we actually don't know it yet, but like, we are laying these foundations that are just going to be naturally evolving into the lives of everybody in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years, which is the last thing I'm going to say. Sorry, I'm taking too much time here. Because this is why it's so important not to just look at the price of a fucking token. Like, you have to sit back, you have to understand what's going on in the ecosystem, you have to understand white papers, you have to understand what the long-term objectives of the platforms are, and think about that in that context. Like, how can this evolve to the world that you want to see in 15, 20 years? That's all.
Solid answer.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, you said like kids not having bank accounts. Like, I don't know if you've ever been a crypto trader, like a full adult crypto trader, and try to open a bank account, or have anything to do with crypto in your business and try to open a bank account. It's not just kids. Like, kids are not allowed. Obviously, anybody involved in crypto is not allowed. And honestly, it's a service, because like Mango Labs, we don't have a bank account. I hope we will never have a bank account. We have a USDC wallet. You can go check what's what goes. We got funded by the DAO and where it goes. But like bank account. So there is some aspect of this where you can't buy groceries with your Solana wallet. And I really think that we should be putting a lot more of our effort to solving that problem of maybe it'll never get there. Maybe no one will ever accept native crypto thing, but maybe it could be something like you cut out the bank accounts altogether. You have a FTX US account, and then like an FTX Pay card, and you pay groceries with you shop with it. And the connection between FTX US and like the whole crypto world is extremely easy. And so you use like Mango as your savings account and FTX US as like your checking account. That would be really cool. That's what I would like to see. And I'm kind of bearish on everybody having like a wallet that they custody, and like you have to think maybe kids can do that, but I also think you have all these people who have they struggle with like Google, and so yeah, and if you lose your keys, like that's sad. Like that could happen to me. Some people don't even understand that you lose it, it's gone. It's really, really gone. So I don't know. I'm not super bullish on everybody like self-custodying, but yeah.
Unless we really start abstracting away these complexities, if you can do that, combine it with like, this is where there's like a merging of CeFi and DeFi to me.
Yeah.
Like there's just never going to be the whole world may be using DeFi, they're just not going to know they're using it. Like to me, that would be a huge victory.
And I think it's just like the largest catalyst of financial literacy we've seen in a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say without like arguing that everyone should and will have their own wallet in the state that it's in. It's like, I mean, I know the comparison to the internet is a bit of a tired one, but the internet allowed people to go work on their own motorcycle and figure it out from YouTube videos or documents. And I mean, the internet allowed me to start learning about these more esoteric financial concepts. And in a way, crypto allows people to not just read, but do some of them with that ungating like I was talking about. And I mean, younger people are just so much more open-minded to trying new things in general, right? I taught English. That's why kids are better at English. It's because they're just not afraid to make mistakes and they, get into it. And I've been joking for like years that half of my investment thesis for crypto is that, there's all these young people getting older who are going to be more willing to like accept this technology and give it a spin. So
I think that's why it's a long ball game. Like you have to keep that arc in mind when you're with whatever you're building.
I mean, it's so true just looking around here too, right? There's a lot of cool students I've met here this week. So yeah.
Exactly.
So how can TradFi start participating in DeFi?
They should get their hands dirty, right?
Yeah, forks. That's the first place to start. No, I mean, I think there's always going to be a place for TradFi, right? Because again, to the point of looking at the arc, right? The arc isn't done for a large percent of the population, right? And I think just as time goes on and everything matriculates, there's always going to be that market. And with that market, there's always going to be this combination between TradFi and DeFi or CeFi and DeFi, right? Where there's going to be two independent markets. There's going to be the person who wants, the appraisal. There's going to be someone who wants to know that whatever they're buying is secured, whatever that means, even if it's for a peace of mind, right? But then you have this newer generation that frankly doesn't care, right? It's either that they don't care or they felt something out of 2008 where they don't trust anything anymore. And I think both markets are going to live in this really nice, like harmonious fashion where if one market were to try to tap into the other market too much, you would see kind of a disorder, really.
I think just, continuation of what we were just talking about, like the abstraction of complexities of what we're doing. Like I always say this at home or to my co-founder, Rob, like you don't go to the bathroom in the copper pipe that's under your house, right? Like, go to the bathroom in the toilet. And like,
Wait, you do?
Some people, yeah. And, but the point being is that there needs to be something at the application layer and oftentimes to service the majority of the population, like that that to abstract away the difficulties, the complexities, and to make it easy, but still at that base layer, that's where I think decentralized finance really lives. Like in the long term, you just like you have these tectonic plates, like we talked about, and like they're all sitting underneath the earth, and then like you have land and things are being built about on the land above it, but moving below it are these big open pieces of software that work together to allow the system to live on top. And it's not going to be the responsibility of everybody to need to learn to manage your own keys and the risks that come with it. It's going to be more along the lines of like, hey, there's an option to do that, but there's also an option to do something a little easier, where that's how I think traditional finance and DeFi will end up coexisting. Like TradFi at the application layer, DeFi underneath.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe TradFi like slowly loses its capital and labor, like all the people involved, to DeFi. Where I don't know the intent behind the question of like how does TradFi get into DeFi, but
how do they get involved? Like how can
yeah,
they participate?
I think probably like right now it's very hard. I mean, based
agree
on
with you on that,
based on what I've talked to, based on all like the TradFi people that I've talked to, really I think they have to go talk to like Brett at FTX. That's kind of like their only option, and Brett has to succeed. FTX has to succeed in what they're doing, because there's a lot of just regulatory, uncertainty, or there's just some things that just don't mesh well, and just like don't make a lot of sense. They need everybody to be KYC'd, stuff like that. It's like a totally different way of thinking in DeFi. So I do see, okay, setting aside, maybe FTX US brings them on board in some fashion, or a lot of the people like you were in TradFi, but you quit or whatever, and you went into DeFi. And, I think that's like a common story for a lot of people. Like the institution itself doesn't get involved, but the people bring their skills and they come involved, and like money just flows around. Where I think like probably 5 years ago SBF was broke, and like now he's one of the wealthiest men, and that's actually a common story in crypto, not to that degree, but like so capital shift, labor and capital has shifted, and it will keep shifting.
I think the labor piece for sure, and like you're going to have some kind of turning point where the rest of the world's going to catch up to the fact of the value of providing value to a network, whether it's in some form of labor or whether it's engineering, whether it's providing some other type of resource. I 1000% agree that's where things are going to move. Like the whole construct of the labor force globally is like, that's one place where like the whole ideals of like decentralization, I think, are gonna like massively win.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is just about getting your hands dirty, and there's so many glaring market inefficiencies where you can make money, especially when you have more capital now. This is closing a bit as compared to how it was 3 or 4 years ago, or even more than that. But I mean, just getting used to how block explorers present data, for example, working with the data from a blockchain stack. It's an adjustment, but it's not so radically different. It's just a different form of technological infrastructure, right? And I mean, as much as you can with regulation, I guarantee you your accounting department will hate you less than my CPA hates me for messing around with this stuff, So like, I think spending time on Twitter is also like a good way to start like kind of prepping yourself to it. Crypto Twitter is really taken up. Well, I resisted joining it for years until a couple years back, but like it's indisputably the best place for like in the moment data, seeing all these figures in the space talking, and some even TradFi participation in those talks occasionally. It's a shame I resisted Twitter for so long because it's a sweet way to get involved in the space.
Very powerful sentiment engine also.
Yeah, for that too. Everything.
All right, guys, thanks. We can take questions if anyone has any questions.
We were that exciting.
All right, well, we'll all
Very
be here.
comprehensive.
Yeah.
Good job.